There's been some major moves from some of the biggest players in the gaming industry, primarily Microsoft finally taking the plunge with their first pseudo handheld. Yes, you could probably consider the Logitech G Cloud their first handheld, but let's be honest, that thing was a flaming pile of poo, so honestly, I don't count it. But this is a direct collaboration with the intent of making a better Xbox branded PC handheld. Fundamentally, it is no different from something like the future Lenovo Legion Go 2 or even the next upcoming AMD version of the MSI Claw, because they're both going to be using the Z2 Extreme, and unlike those other models though, the Xbox comes in a cheaper, lower power configuration with a modified version of the Z2 base chip. But the point of why I bring this up is that this is merely just the beginning of Microsoft's and AMD's close partnership. President of Microsoft, Sarah Bond, has announced a direct multi-year collaboration with AMD, which frankly isn't that surprising. AMD has been behind the entire gaming console industry since the Xbox One and PS4 generation, so it's not too surprising to see them continuing to foster this partnership. Leaked contracts and discussions between Sony and AMD show a very similar setup where they're working together on developing new hardware specifically for their systems. So it's not too surprising to see Microsoft make the same moves, especially when she specified it's not just in their consoles, but in PCs and handhelds. Implication being that the actual Xbox handheld that we're seeing right now won't be the only one we'll see, just some more very exciting foreshadowing of the upcoming potential of an actual dedicated Microsoft Xbox handheld. The Game Rant article continues to state, from quotes from a video interview thing Sarah Bond did, that the partnership will enable play across devices in entirely new ways without being locked into a single store or device. Which the key word there is store, because Microsoft and their Xbox Line systems never had third-party stores on them. You would buy games from Microsoft and play them on their system, which has been the standard practice for all game consoles since they first began in the 70s. Ever since the Xbox One first released, it has slowly become more apparent that game consoles at this point are functionally just gaming PCs. Therefore, the next logical step is that you can play more than just Xbox games on an Xbox, which some people manage to do this through the power of emulation, unlocking developer mode things, but that's pretty much been the extent of it so far. But with the recent advent of them starting to allow things like Steam, Epic Games, and something else allowed on their platforms, it is an incredibly exciting time, because at this point, Microsoft's biggest advantage is their openness, allowing you to play your games wherever and however you want. They don't care how you play their games as long as you are playing their games. And if more incentive to buy their hardware is to enable you to play games from not just them on their system, so be it. It's clear that Microsoft is charging into a whole new direction for consoles, turning it into a more PC-like state, while Sony likes to sit on its island and pretend nothing around it is changing, and potentially releasing their own handheld probably won't change much. Though, the ideas that Microsoft is pushing with this cross-buy, buy once, play anywhere mentality was really started with Sony back on the PSP and the PS Vita with cross-buy. Some games, if you bought them on your PSP or PS Vita, were also available on systems like the PS3 and PS4, allowing you to even cross-save your data, play on your PS4, PS3, then continue on the go with your PSP or PS Vita. Though, if I remember correctly, it was rather limited on the PSP. I don't believe there were many games that supported it. It was much more supported on the PS Vita, which came out a little bit after. So it makes a lot more sense why they developed this technology with that hardware in mind specifically. So it makes way more sense that it was more popular on that. But after the Vita died, Sony really didn't invest or really mention cross-buy and cross-play stuff like that ever again. And with Microsoft entering this whole new direction, it makes a lot of sense for them to sort of play on those same ideas, taking it into a new direction with their own Microsoft Xbox spin. The article also goes on to mention that Xbox is working closely with the Windows team to ensure that it is bringing top-tier gaming performance to all of their platforms. And this is very exciting for a few reasons, because the more integrated those teams get, the more playable things like the Xbox Ally are realistically going to be when those finally release. And hopefully that operating system, that fork of Windows, is going to be amazing, because it would realistically solve a lot of the problems people potentially could have with SteamOS, especially if you're using it as your only computer. Some programs like DaVinci Resolve and the Adobe Suite have issues running, so for me, using a Steam Deck is generally kind of tough choice. So yes, you could do something like a Legion Go or an Ally, but that comes the caveat that it is functionally just a computer. So when you're on the go, it's not going to be nearly as nice to play as the Steam Deck because you're using full-blown Windows. So this sort of in-between of a sort of a Steam Deck's ease of use and the wide-ranging compatibility and potential performance gains of Windows could honestly be the best of both worlds. And hearing that they're deepening that collaboration to improve it further is very exciting. I'm also just generally surprised it's taken this long for them to actually take that step, primarily because, if I remember correctly, the original Xbox One's operating system was built off the back of a Windows-based kernel. So it's not too surprising to see them make this step, considering the Xbox's already native operating system is based, at least somewhat, on Windows in the first place. The Series X's successor is reportedly continuing at full pace with a launch suspected around 2027, which is frankly not that surprising. That puts it about average when it comes to Xbox console lifespans, so I could have predicted this from a mile away. If I had to guess, it'll probably end up being around October, November, December timeframe, like the last couple months of 2027 for in time a holiday release. So that's not terribly surprising to hear. So we could have generally guessed that, but this next bit from Phil Spencer is incredibly exciting. Xbox is planning to bring their titles to the Nintendo Switch 2, which Phil Spencer goes on to say and praise Nintendo as a great and valuable partner, which is super exciting because a lot of my favorite games on the Xbox and just of all time are things like Halo, Gears of War, and I'll be honest, the Xbox, I haven't bought one in a very long time. And yes, I can play them on PC, but the Switch feels like a great home for a lot of these kinds of games. Halo in particular, to me, makes a lot of sense because it's the closest to like a almost pseudo family-friendly first-person shooter. Yes, I'm aware the vast majority of Halo games are still rated M for mature, except for a few exceptions like Halo 5 Guardians, Infinite, Wars, and Reach, but honestly, in comparison to something like Call of Duty, Halo makes a great deal more sense than Call of Duty, purely on the basis that you're not killing people, generally you're killing aliens. Honestly though, it would, to me, make a lot of sense as the natural evolution of the kids who grew up playing Splatoon, Splatoon 2, and Fortnite to eventually work their way up to a more intense person shooter, whether that be Call of Duty or not, doesn't matter. In this instance, I think Halo would be a natural evolution, at least on Nintendo platforms. It is still intense, but intense in a way that kids could enjoy and parents don't need to be worried about. It's not as bloody and gory as Call of Duty has been a lot in the past, and unlike Call of Duty, Halo hasn't had any massive controversies outside of things like people not liking the graphics in Halo Infinite, or being upset at the game just not being great. So Halo feels like the kind of franchise Nintendo can realistically get behind because it shares a lot of DNA with Metroid. Other than that, I would love to hear what you guys think. Are you excited with Microsoft and AMD's deepening relationship? Are you excited for any potential PC handheld or dedicated handheld console Microsoft might make. I would love to hear what you guys think about this down below. And if you like, comment, and subscribe, all the other social media garbage down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.